Hi, I'm Andy Acton.
And I'm Chris Strevens.
This is Dentology, the Business of Dentistry podcast. So welcome to this special episode of Dentology. And this week, it's just Chris and I. And in another life, Chris and I, we own and run Frank Taylor Associates, a business that values and sells dental practices. And we obviously talk to lots of people who are looking to buy a dental practice. Popular topic. There's lots of them out there. So we thought we'd do a short episode where we just talk through our top tips for somebody looking to buy a dental practice.
Yeah, because it's not quite as... I think it's not as easy as it sounds. I think people sort of assume it's a bit like buying a house, which it is in some aspect, you know, when you go and do your viewing and when you do your selection. But there's other things, little subtle nuances that you have to be careful. That'd be a good choice of word.
No, I think so.
Because you've got to remember that the people who are selling, this is like their baby.
Oh,
so there's
sure.
a huge emotional investment. And in most people's houses, they've lived there a long time, but they're not invested in the team because they don't have a team. As you said, you know, we've done many seminars, continue to do many seminars, and we just thought, well, yeah, I think it probably comes out of the last one we did, actually, that the amount of information we were asked about, could we give them top tips? And we thought,
on the buyer's masterclass.
Why do we give them?
Well, I think for me, the first one actually expands into a second together, and I think it's location. I think
critical.
You it's one of the very, very few things you can't change about a dental practice where it is. I mean, arguably people say, well, you can change the location. You can. There's significant risk and cost that comes with that, and in reality, most people don't. So the location's critical, and the reason it's important is as an owner, you're going to go there 4, 5, possibly 6 times a week. So if that journey, you think it hopefully is going to be 20, 25 minutes, but actually with rush hour, it's 45, 50 minutes. You could be spending close to 2 hours a day commuting. And are you okay with that?
Well, do you remember Frank Taylor Associates? He used to say something which I always used to think was quite entertaining, but I think he's probably right. He said, do you want to buy a practice? Now, what was it? The sun rises in the east and sets in the west, wasn't it? He said, do you want to own a practice that is based to the west of you? Because then in the morning, you're not driving into bright sunlight, and in the evening, you're driving home not into bright sunlight. You'll be squinting all the time. And it always used to make me think, oh, yeah. And then Andy and I, we had do you remember that couple who bought a practice? They lived in Swindon, okay, which if you don't know where Swindon is, it's sort of in Wiltshire. Well, not sort of, it's in Wiltshire, and it's in the middle, roughly, of the M4, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So they bought a practice in Bath, which is one end of the M4. And where did they buy the other one? Remember?
I'm going to guess probably something like Reading.
Yeah. No, even better, Hounslow.
Oh, wow.
So they went for Hounslow because according to the I think it was the AA route map at the time, it told them when they checked it that they were very similar driving times. Those of you who've ever tried to drive into London along the M4 during a rush hour, trust me, it's not. So then they bought it and then they sold it about a year and a half later. I tell you the other thing I think on location as well is I think the location, there's almost 2 different location lenses. One is where do you want to be and live, maybe, and then where is you want to work? Because if you want to work and make more money, you might have to choose a different location to where you want to live. Does that make sense?
And also, I think it's okay to live in one area and work in another. You know, you can service a community in an area that you don't want to live in, but it might be a very lucrative dental practice.
Yeah, definitely.
Likewise, you may want to have a practice in the village that you live in as well. So there's choices. And I think also location is kind of what other things do you want around there? Do you want to be near a train station? Do you want parking? All the factors that go into that pot. But I think trying to work out what works for you is a really important start point.
I was going to say, I think that's the most important thing. Work out what is your choice of location. Because you can only, the danger is, isn't it? If you haven't quite grasp that one, you're then looking at every dental practice from every broker that you see, and you are unfocused. So therefore, you'll never actually probably either make a decision or
which is
could
a risk,
make
which is a risk.
bad decision.
So I think once you've got that sorted, I think the next thing you need to really get your head around is your budget. I think you need to work out what you can afford. And we know at the moment UK banks will typically require a 10% deposit.
Mm-hmm.
So depending on what funds you have available to you in cash, that will start to dictate what sort of practice you can afford. So if you have £80,000 available to you, about £10,000 of that may well get used in fees and costs. So you've got £70,000 as a deposit, as a 10% deposit. You could buy a practice for about £700,000 and the bank would fund the difference. But knowing those numbers is important, because a bit like with the location, what you don't want to be doing is looking at practices that are outside of your budget, because you're wasting your time. It might be frustrating and disappointing. Or it may highlight you that you need to save more by way of a deposit, and you might need to defer that decision to buy by a year or two.
And I think the other one is, if you are serious, don't buy your house first. Because I think sometimes, when we talk to our guys in finance, people will sometimes, cause themselves issues by buying the house first, using their deposit on that. And then they might actually want a dental practice somewhere else, but you've sort of, you've almost burnt your bridge, haven't you? You've got yourself a little bit
your
stuck.
cash is gone.
And it's still generous, 10%, who else can borrow 90% of a purchase price of anything? I think we're lucky if we can get 60% of a purchase
we've done well.
price.
And aligned to that, the bank will likely lend you 100% of the freehold.
Yeah, that's true.
If you want to buy the property with a dental practice, they'll lend you 100% of the property.
And at good interest rates. What? I know, 2%, 2.5%, 2.1%. I mean, it's
the terms are good.
Buying a dental practice as a cost is expensive, but fundability is cheap. And
then related to the budget and the deposit, that will start to dictate the sort of size of practice you can buy. And in this context, size does matter. And it's not just a budget thing, because the majority of people who buy a practice, they're first-time buyers. So if you're buying a practice that, say, has 2 surgeries, that may have a team of 6 or 7 people, and there might be a couple of part-timers in there. That may feel a manageable situation for a first-time buyer.
Your first purchase.
But if you suddenly decided to buy your first practice, which might be a 6 or 7 surgery practice, and that could have a team of 20, 25 people, you need to be comfortable with your own skills and experience to manage a business and a team.
It's not enough to be a dentist
of that size. So the budget and the size of the practice, there is a correlation between the two, which can be quite healthy. But even if you have a really large deposit, do spend some time thinking about whether you feel comfortable buying a practice of that size, because you have to manage that business. This is beyond just delivering clinical dentistry. Yeah. You're now moving into the world of owning a practice.
It's true, and I think sometimes the danger is, isn't it, that big isn't necessarily better. And I sort of, in my head, I always try to find an analogy, but it's almost a bit like you buy a Ferrari, but you never take it out of third gear or something, because you've bought a car based on its price, maybe not on whether it suits you. And really what you should be doing is buying a dental practice that suits you. It's like we say, if you've never done private dentistry and you've only done NHS, then you probably need a bit of experience before you do private dentistry. If you're not an endo specialist, then don't buy an endo practice. But
and I think on that point about the experience, I think you're right. I think you need to make sure that the practice you buy has a patient base with a demand which you feel comfortable delivering, but possibly also gives you an opportunity to grow and expand, and it gives you some ambition. So I think, there's lots of considerations in here, and I think people will weight these in different ways themselves. I would go back to the beginning, which I think the location should have a very significant weighting, but the sort of practice it is and what the opportunities that practice presents, for some people, that will be a big driving factor in terms of whether that would be the right practice for them or not. This week's episode is brought to you in partnership with Ultimate Dental Business. We know as guys who have supported dentists for over 25 years, and through hosting this podcast, that building business skills in dentistry is vital. Time and again, we hear from dentists who tell us that they find the business side of dentistry the most challenging. And we know that stress and pressure comes from doing things we don't feel well equipped to do. That is why we are delighted to be part of Ultimate Dental Business, the new dental business hub delivering top-tier business training for dentists. Founded by Dr. Brad Thornton and Dr. Krubal Shah, Ultimate Dental Business is a response to the lack of robust dental business education currently available. Through our effective collective discussions with dentists, it was clear they most needed good structure and effective guidance to give them the knowledge and tools to be successful dental business owners, and to create a business that serves them rather than the business that takes all their time and energy to keep going. To find out more about developing your own business education, click on the link in the show notes or go to ultimatedentalbusiness.com.
I think also part of that, as you were saying, is there's effectively quite often, isn't there, in all the practices we see, hidden fees, hidden goodwill that you don't pay for, because a lot of practices will refer certain treatments out.
Yeah.
And whilst as a valuer, we will try and identify those, sometimes it's one for you to have in your conversation with the seller. Because actually, if they're referring out, I don't know, whatever it might be, one implant a month, a typical price of $2,500, that's 30 grand, isn't it?
Yep.
Even if you have to bring it in-house and pay an associate to deliver it, that's money and profit that you're not paying for. Yeah. So you need to think about it. It's almost a bit like, I suppose, isn't it, buying a house that you reckon you can extend?
Yeah, similar.
And push the value up. So, but people need to think about stuff like that.
And then another one for me is making sure you have a really good viewing of a practice, because it's likely you're probably only going to visit the practice once before you're going to need to put in an offer and make a decision as to whether this is somewhere you want to be. So go prepared. Make sure you read the prospectus, you understand the financials, have a mini CV in your head of the things that you want to tell the seller. So you can explain who you are, ask about the team, ask about what their journey's been like of owning the practice, ask why they're selling. Really try and get a sense of the culture and what the rhythm of that practice is, to then help you decide based on the information you already knew before you attended, whether that's the right practice for you, because that viewing really is an important
about making
time.
a connection, isn't it, really?
Yes.
Life is about making a connection, whether it be with individuals in our personal lives, dentistry with your patients, but this is exactly the same. I always think about that story, which I will tell yet again, as I've told many a time to any buyers, is David Brewer, who's managing director of our finance company, FTA Finance. He tells a brilliant story of a guy who financially, he had a certificate that said, you can borrow this amount of money. So his financial credibility was without doubt. And he 3 times he put an offer in and got declined, didn't he? Got rejected.
Yeah.
The vendor said, no, I don't want him. And it was like, well, I wonder why that is. And David said to him, what happens? He said, well, I just go to the viewing. And I ask some questions. And David said, so just tell me what you do. Do a a role play? But you can't call them role plays now. They've got to be conversation rehearsals or something. And the guy said, well, what I do is I turn up and then I get my flip chart. I get my what's it called? My clipboard with my notes on it, and I ask him questions. And David said, well, that's where you're going wrong, because what you've got to remember as a buyer is what you're doing then is the first representation of what you're going to be like during the legal process. So this guy was looking like a real what's it. So he never wanted it. So David just said the simplest advice. He said, don't take take the clipboard. And the bloke went next time, got accepted on his offer. But from his point of view, he was just asking questions. But going back to that relationship thing, just think of what it's coming across.
Yeah. And on that point, I would also encourage buyers that if you view and you like it, you do have to take decisive action. Because if you think how many times we've had people who have rung us a week or 10 days after they've viewed a practice and they say, oh, well, I'm thinking to put an offer in. And they get the sad news that an offer's already been made, it's been accepted, and it's too late. So you do need to take action. And sometimes it's easy to get excited by looking at prospectus, going and viewing, thinking about it, but not. And it's the action that's critical. It's the action that takes you from being a prospect to the intended purchaser.
What's that phrase? Analysis paralysis, isn't it? I get it in the fact of it's probably the first practice and maybe the only practice. It's probably a big amount of money. You've never done it before.
Oh, it's a big deal.
But
it's a big deal.
But don't prevaricate, because someone else won't be. And therefore you lose your opportunity. It's almost a bit like, remember the girl at school, there'd be a girl at school that you wanted to ask out, you never did, and then your mate did. And it's like, oh damn, if I only have asked it. But it's that sort of
And the thing is, because of the disconnect between buyers and sellers, we have over 7,000 people looking countrywide, and in a given year there'll only be a few hundred dental practices. If the right one comes along, the danger is you miss it. Yeah. And you might then go into a cycle of having to wait for another year, possibly 2 years, for the right one to come along again, which is a real shame.
No. You don't get one within
which is a real shame.
They're always coming up. You'll get in dental practices. You miss one, you will have missed your opportunity.
So let's assume you are the person who takes decisive action. You've got your offer accepted. For me, it's making sure you get specialist advice. The difference between somebody who doesn't understand dentistry and somebody who does is massive.
And I think for me, I think we're all very worried, aren't we, about someone trying to tuck us up. I think that's we almost have this, someone's going to do us harm. And I think I would say in general, it's an okay stance to have, but actually most people are genuine. But the specialist advice there is to protect you and protect them. Yeah. And I think that to engage one, a lawyer, I think was where we're really looking at it. To have someone who really understands dentistry, but is also able to provide a balance. Because I think there's sometimes things that come up will need a decision to be made. Yeah. But you need to have that specialist advice and listen to people who maybe had more experience and a bit more practicality, because I'm sure, I've never been a dentist, so I don't know, but I'm sure there's a way to do a restoration, and then there's another way to do a restoration, and you might have to adapt to restoration as you're going, because the textbook just isn't going to work at this moment in time. Yeah, no, I agree. I think that specialist advice is critical. And then people also need to appreciate that buying a dental practice takes time. It takes months. And through that period, viewing is exciting. Putting your offer in, having your offer accepted, it's so exciting. And then you go into several months of needing to work through the paperwork, arranging your finance, getting the bank valuation done, working with CQC, It becomes quite a drag to get through, but you need to stay positive and keep momentum in your deal, because the more you can keep momentum into your transaction, the better. There is no reason why your deal should not go through in 4 to 5 months. But we know that many deals take 7, 8, sometimes 9 months. But it doesn't need to be that way. If you get momentum and you get your interest aligned with the seller, you should be able to do it way quicker. And also, you don't want to be that part of the transaction that's holding it up, do you? No. So it's that thing of, surely if you want to buy something, so you get on with it. Some of it's outside of your control, but a lot of it is in your control. So basically just push those buttons, push people, make the phone calls, send the emails. Don't just make your offer and disappear. It's a prime example, isn't it? Someone makes an offer, they get very excited and they don't pay their deposit. Oh yeah. So what does that say to the seller, and what does that say to the broker? That says that either you can't afford it, so that's not a really good start, or the fact you're not really that interested, which is neither a good start. So you're already on a negative foot with a seller and with a broker. So, and also, I think these tips, they're adjustments for lots of dentists that haven't been through this before. But as a result of going through this process, you'll learn things about yourself and you'll develop skills that are going to serve you incredibly well when you become a business owner. So this process is almost like a bit of an apprenticeship in some ways. Yeah, it's true. It's good because point. It means you have to adjust how you make decisions, how you engage with people, how you think about things beyond clinical practice, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But anyway, those are our tips for people buying a dental practice. I hope people listen, and I hope they follow them. Absolutely. Thank you for listening to this episode of Dentology, where we discuss the business of dentistry. If you like what you heard, please do subscribe where you found this episode. That would be amazing. And also follow us on Instagram.